have to cross over to Joy FM, where the Super Morning Show is hosting the MPP's Peter McMahon. We know that he was the chairman of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's campaign, and we would want to hear from him.
Hoping 400,000 plus over his parliamentary candidates in the 2012 elections. Okay, so something went wrong, because if his voters didn't vote, fine. Why didn't they vote? Why didn't they vote? And where are they? Okay, so for us, as part of the new ways of strengthening ourselves and getting to know our figures, we were very focused from day one on the register, because as I said earlier, the heartbeat of the campaign is the voter, and the voter is on the register. So you must be concerned with the numbers. After all, at the end of the day, it was numbers that Mrs. Charlotte Osei came and gave out. So the numbers comes from the register. So we were very particular and sensitive to the numbers that were playing out on the register from 2012.
So you think your party won on a bloated register?
Of course, the register is bloated. I won't deny that. But I'm saying we prevented the bloated or the excesses from being played out on the voting day.
Well, 68% of the names on the register voted.
Yes.
So you're saying how much of the remaining 32% is non-existent?
I can tell you that because, as I said earlier, we focused on the register. We printed the entire 2012 register polling station by polling station and gave it out to, and you know, MPP is structured with a 5-member polling station executives around the country's 28,000 plus polling stations. So we printed the register with the photographs, with the names, and you live in the community, go and identify them. And if I show you the results of that checks, it will tell you the number of people on the register who are not there. Then those who are dead, and for those who were even identified by the community as dead, the process of removing them was so laborious and cumbersome that people didn't bother to do it. That is why MPP's call for the Nigerian style of validation was necessary, because those who are dead could not have risen up and get their ghosts to come and validate them. So there are still dead people, and if you recall, the special task force that the Electoral Commission set up came up that there were about 600,000 or more people who are dead on the register, and they continue to die. You see, we continue to pile new people on the register. So do you want to tell me we don't die? Where are the dead people, and what the method, whether legal or illegal, of removing them from the register is so cumbersome? And we have to find a way of dealing with that issue to get a proper register.
So you see, what I'm trying to measure is the actual impact of these, non-existent
like
people.
I said, and the impact
so out
is
of the 32% that didn't vote, or do you believe the entire 32% are non-existent people? What percentage of that remainder does the NPP consider to be, non-existent people on the register?
Well, for now, I can't give the exact figures, but I'm telling you that on authority that there are a lot of dead people on the register, and the way of getting them out wasn't the best. I thought that we should have gone the Nigerian way of validation, because certainly dead people cannot rise up and come and validate themselves.
I mean, you do have a lot of confidence that this is the case. It's just that without being able to measure it, we're wondering where you get the confidence from.
We also made sure that this issue of people not being on the register or others managing to cast 2, 3 or multiple votes was not on this time around.
All right.
We made sure, and we trained our agents and the general public on how to prevent double, multiple voting.
Ace Ankomah has joined us. We're very happy to see him, Ace. Good morning to you.
Morning, Coach. Let me apologize for being late.
Oh, you'll pay us back with some wache or something.
Well, it depends on whether you line up for the wache or not. CNN might see you up and in your country.
Yes, indeed. Let's not put out false information about Ghana. I'm shocked. We'll talk about that and more later. We'll also talk a little bit about what happened after the election with Mr. McMenu regarding these reports of NPP, supporters causing all kinds of mayhem, resulting in the death of one person in the central region. Very sad. But we'll talk about that in a very short while. I want to bring in Mr. Kofi Adams once more. Now, Mr. Adams, you were explaining to us earlier that throughout the period when when your party kept saying that you were cruising to a victory and that you had a lead on the NPP, that at the time that was the case. Now, I'm aware that perhaps 3 hours before the results were announced, when the EC had already got about 225 constituency results, your representative at the collation center was still telling Ghanaians that you had a lead on the NPP and that you had 50-point-something% of the votes.
Yeah,
of course, now we know that could not possibly have been the case. Why was he lying?
You wouldn't know, no. I think that you should be careful with the words that we use on people, that he was lying when you are not informed about the situation under which. So
I apologize, Mr. Adams. Let me give you the evidence so that you understand why I'm saying it.
Let's be careful with the words that we use.
Mr. Adams, I am careful. So let me explain to you why I'm able to use that
you do not
expression.
know the circumstance. So
okay, I'm saying I do. I'm saying I do. So let me explain.
You have just narrated that Electoral Commission have gotten these figures and so on and so forth, and that he was lying.
Mr. Adams.
So you need to find out.
We saw his screen.
You don't know.
Please,
the processes.
pardon me.
You don't know the processes that we go through there. So let people who work there, who know the processes that we go through there, explain to you what happens there before you call somebody either as a liar or lying. You must take note of that. When EC receive results, the results are passed on to the parties. The parties look at it, make sure they have confirmed it with their party system outside of the collation center to be sure that the figures are correct. Until they do that, they don't count that in. So the EC will first receive, and they will announce that we have received this. And that was why the chairperson of the commission at a point was worried that party representatives were not certifying results to enable her ultimately sign for them to be inputted.
You mean your party representatives?
Not us only. Even the MPP rep at a point were also not willing to sign. And that was why I believe that their representative spoke to Joy FM specifically and indicated that there were some issues that are resulting in checks and then delay in endorsing. So it wasn't only the NDC. So I don't know whether you have forgotten about this incident. So it wasn't only the NDC. And indeed, other parties, the CPP representatives, even the PNC also claimed that they had petitioned about 11 of the constituencies and therefore they were not ready to endorse those results. So the results may come, the EC will receive and announce that they have received, but then the process haven't concluded. And therefore, for you in the party, you don't count that in. So when you are communicating only what you have an authority on, and you are sure that it's been confirmed with the institutions or bodies that you have put in place to make sure what comes in is absolutely correct. But
on what authority were you saying 50% at that time?
I will
225 constituencies.
I will get you. Your EC have received. Mm-hmm. But that's why I was just telling you. The EC received, and then they have to pass it on to the parties. Mm-hmm. When the party has not concluded, they don't count those in until they have concluded before they will count it in. So concluded at that point, you say?
Concluded what? That's why I want the clarity. Where were you getting that figure, that 50.5%?
Because you were dealing with a lesser number of constituencies. You were dealing with a lesser number of constituencies. Not what the EC have received.
So you had results for a lesser number of constituencies.
You had certified a lesser. than what the EC have received, because there were some that will still be what? Outstanding, hanging.
When you say certified, what do you mean? I mean, all the pink sheets had been signed. So how had you, NDC, certified lesser
I think I took my time to let you know what it is that happens. Results get counted at the polling station. They get collated at the collation center in the constituency. Then they are forwarded to the region. Each region has a dedicated fax at the headquarters. Then they fax it in. It comes to the EC. The EC receives the results. Then they pass it on to the parties. Then the parties will receive this, and now the parties in the National Collation Center will now check with their party structure outside of the National Collation Center that these results have just come in from maybe Kwadaso in the Ashanti region. Can you check with our system, maybe back in Ashanti region in Kwadaso, whether the figure as reported is exactly what was collated at Kwadaso?
What system would you have in Kwadaso? What is this parallel system that you would have in Kwadaso in this example that you're giving?
You are not just even checking the parallel system, you are checking even the Electoral Commission own system. Because at their collation point, you have a collation officer there who is part of the collation process to just be sure that results as transmitted has not changed in the course of what? Transmission. So you do this, and it takes time to get the confirmation.
But you have your own polling agents who have signed these results. So
it looks like explaining to you is becoming very difficult. I don't know whether maybe McMahon
well, let me come
aid you later.
There are certain inaccuracies in the statements.
Well, I don't know
before,
am I the only slow person in the room? Does anyone else get what is being explained?
What happens? Okay. If you take a typical constituency, say they may have about 100 polling stations. So each of these polling station results is sent to a collation center where it gets collated into a constituency results. That constituency results is then signed off, and that is what is faxed to the headquarters of EC. When it comes, parties are interested in confirming the results that have come in, that this is really a true result, before your representative at the Electoral Commission there would also accept that this is true, it can go. Then it goes now and then get inputted. And that's why I was telling you that if you observe at one of the press conferences that was organized by the EC, the chairperson was appealing to candidates to speak to their representatives to certify results quickly enough for them to be able to what? Input them and work with them. I don't know whether you forgot that press briefing at a point. So this happens. Once they haven't confirmed it, they on their own will still be dealing with the figures that they feel that we have cross-checked. And now, okay, maybe EC, per your analysis, may have received 200. But as far as they are concerned, maybe 130 is what has passed. 70 is yet to pass. So if the 70 hasn't passed, in his calculation, he will not be adding the 70. That is why at every time you are announcing, you give indication that out of this, you have this lead. Not out of maybe the totals that have been received. It is out of what you have accepted that truly has come in. This is the situation. So if you don't know what the person was really communicating, you may end up speaking ill about the person. But just so I won't spend so much time on it, I'm happy that Mark Menu is not saying that the 2012 register was bloated or over bloated by his own analysis. That there are dead people in, that they printed out the registers for their persons and they found out that they were dead people. It meant that they genuinely registered, except that they have passed on. So if they have passed on, the system of removing dead people is what we can be talking about. Not that somebody put in names that did not exist at the time they entered the register. And also it is important, he said some were not there. You observe a day, 3 days before elections, the number of persons that were moving out of Accra out of Kumasi and out of places getting back to their constituencies. What it means is that people may necessarily sometimes register in their constituencies but are not living there. So when you go looking for them, you will not find them. So if you didn't find somebody in a home to mark in the register, does not mean for you to conclude that the person doesn't really exist. Because look at the number of buses that left. My last point to talk about the vote differential. In these elections, this 2016 election, in Krowo constituency, the vote difference that cannot really be accounted for in terms of adding all parliamentary votes and adding the presidential vote is 7,000. Meant that 7,000 more persons got to a polling station, voted for just a presidential candidate, and did not vote for a parliamentary candidate. So it happens. And this went in favor of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. So it is not only in 2012 elections that you have instances where a candidate benefits from more votes than his parliamentary candidate, or people are reported to just have gotten to a polling station and voted presidential and did not vote parliamentary.
All right. Now, I want some general thoughts from our two other guests, and Ace, if you can sort of weave it into the whole, idea of how the entire process went. But before you, Ace, let's quickly touch base with Mr. Abuchi. Now, okay, you've heard what the two parties are saying about why they won, why they lost. From where you sat, from how you analyzed the results as they came through, the question remains: was it that the NPP won it, or is it that the NDC lost it?
I think it's both, Kujo. I think it's both, and I'm just going to say that, unfortunately, years on since we have been practicing this democracy since 1992, I think the parties are still failing to sharpen their research capacities and their research bases to inform their electoral outcomes. I think that it's significant that in the various places, in the various constituencies where the parties have their strongholds, it's significant that in the NDC strongholds, there were major losses, not gains for the NPP exponentially, but there were major losses exponentially for the NDC, and there were marginal gains for the NPP. Even though the gains for the NPP were marginal, the reason they are significant lies in the fact that historically they do not make gains in those areas, and therefore a single-digit gain is significant for the NPP. For the NDC, those are areas that they continually improve, and therefore, given the fact that in this particular year, there were major losses, major hemorrhaging, reflects something significant that ought to have been detected. I suspect that, particularly in the case of the Volta region, which is a case study, I'm sure, for the NDC, for research purposes moving forward, I think in the lead up to the elections, there were some warning signs, and it seems that the NDC itself picked it up. I think part of the campaign messages and the fact that the president in the last election, the campaign, spent some time in the Volta region indicates the fact that the NDC itself was aware that there was something coming. What is surprising and striking to me, though, was how late it took the parties to even realize that, even for the NPP. Significantly, the NPP went to the Volta region and spent some time there, but I think even for the NPP, it's only this year that it hits them that somehow something could be happening in the Volta region. So the point I'm just making is, in terms of the question as to whether the NPP won whether the NDC lost the election as opposed to the NPP winning the election, I think it's both. It's both because, especially in the case of the campaign promises and messages, and I'm not saying this in any way to hit the NPP, but the point is, it's more difficult for a sitting government to win an election per message. Sitting governments tend to win elections per advantage. The advantage of incumbency, the advantage of using all kinds of collateral benefits by reason of being in government. It's very easy to exploit the system, no doubt about that. But per message, having been in government for 4 years, you need to show the electorate that beyond what you have done, there is indeed something you can do by reason of which time would be the only opportunity for you to do that. So you're saying that you've been given 4 years. You've not been able to do this in 4 years. You must establish the fact that indeed you've not been able to do this in 4 years, and you couldn't have done this in 4 years. And so the additional message, you need more time to do that. Now, often, voters are skeptical. And the reason is because parties tend to promise sometimes without being time-bound. So you say all kinds of things, and then voters after 4 years basically just say, look, you said you were going to do A, B, C, D. You should have been mindful of the fact that you have a 4-year time limit or term limit, and so you should have been able to accomplish this in 4 years. So in terms of messaging, the NDC had a tall order, and I think sometimes it reflected in the campaigns. The NPP had some advantage, and I think the NPP did a fantastic job, particularly in the area of crafting a practical message. The one I confuse them sometimes. I don't know which one is district and the constituency.
One dam, one village.
One dam is a village, right? Right. One dam, one village.
One district.
Right. So the one dam, one village, and then the one factory, one constituency.
One district, one factory.
One factory,
and then one constituency, $1 million. Yes, I think that's the,
Right, so
that's the
let's-
less practical part of the
okay,
message.
So let's move on. So there were one
something,
areas,
one something.
Right. There were one areas, one promises. I think that's very practical. That's a very practical message, if you ask me. If I'm in a constituency and I'm told that my constituency is going to get 1 million, let me assume. Forgive me if it's the wrong.
No, you're right.
It's the
But
right
just for-
one.
Okay,
Yeah.
correct.
Kofi,
So
right.
if I assume, if I'm told that my constituency is going to get 1 million cedis
Dollars.
or $1 million exactly, I can easily relate to that. Now, of the big national pie, which often we do not seem to experience at the local level, and we hear all these big numbers at the national level, but they hardly trickle down. And I'm told that we are not going to tell you any fanciful things, no theories, no grandiose ideas. We're giving you 1 million of that, $1 million of that, if you vote us into power. It's easy to quantify, it's easy to measure, it's easy to ascertain, and I can tell whether or not that has actually been implemented when a government is elected into office. So for these ones, voters probably may have elected the MPP because they can ascertain those messages and they can hold them to account. I think that the MPP in that regard was very strategic, and in my opinion, significantly, this may have contributed to their winning power, among others.
Well, we're yet to see whether indeed it might end up being an Achilles heel for them, because you have to show proof,
Yes,
that you've done
it's
these
measurable.
things. Indeed. All right. Now, Ace, we've got a few minutes before we take a break, and I want us to use that time to get your views on, first of all, how it all went, but particularly those issues that you were raising during the processes, and I saw quite a few on your Facebook page.
Well, one of the first things is that those who didn't think social media was going to have an effect on this election, I think they are rethinking. On your point, and stop me when you need to go on break. Okay?
Sure.
On your point that did the NPP win, NDC lose? Look, it's not like a football game where there can be a draw. There's a winner and a loser, and your loss could be, or my win could be based on the fact that your people left you in droves and either voted for me or did not vote. I have still won. So it kind of evens out. But I just wanted to get a bit technical into the forms, and as Kofi Adams went into it, I think we should understand that there are 3 key forms. There's form 22, 23, and 24. 22 is what is declared at the polling station and signed at the polling station by the party agents and the electoral officials. Then all the form, so you can imagine that there are 29,000 form 22s.
Yeah.
It is very difficult to gather 29,000 for all the parties until the MPP pulled its rabbit out of the hat this year. It is difficult to get 29,000. When they went to court, they didn't have it. Right? The next stage is the constituency collation center, where, let's say, the 100 polling stations in the constituency are brought to the collation center. They enter the numbers from the form 22 onto a new form called 23, EL23. Well, there are issues as to whether that those forms really remained in 2012. There's a whole kind of thing that went on. It went to the Supreme Court, but we'll deal with that. So let's call it 23. So they enter police station A, 50, police station B. They have that list. Then they make a declaration there based on the EL23. But that's not what comes to Accra. What comes to Accra is a third form, because you don't send the list of polling stations to Accra. But you can imagine that you have 275 form 23, so it is easier to deal with this. So the parties have their 22s from the 29,000 polling stations. They get 275 copies of EL, of the form 23, right? What comes to Accra is 24, because it's a summary of 23. And that's what comes to Accra. So when they receive 24 in Accra, the parties then have to go back and check from their source Now, I don't see how any party in previous times could have done 100 checks on each of the 275 that came to Accra, so that the first recourse would have been the 23, which was what was compiled at the collation center. And so, if parties said they were checking, how much time should they be given to check? If one party says, well, I need to check all 29,000 before I sign, is the EC going to sit down and, just wait for the party to call polling stations all over the country, right? And so we need to look at some of these things and whether those were indeed justifiable grounds for the results being delayed because some parties wanted to cross-check. The inability of a party to put in place the architecture and infrastructure to cross-check in the shortest time possible for us to move on should not in any way have stopped us. And in fact, I know for a fact, but as at the time that the formal EC declaration was made, many of the forms had not been signed by the parties anyway. So at what point do we draw the line? And I'm thinking going forward.
You mean at the National Collation
At
Center?
the National, yes, at the EC. At what point do we draw the line? The parties ought to get their act together. They cannot hold the entire nation to a ransom because you are unable to call some polling agent who has probably gone to bed out of sadness. Now, so these are some of the things we need to look at. And then, but let's look. There's something I saw this year, and which was quite impressive. I was on a visit somewhere outside the country. I was in California, and I met an MPP candidate. And he opened his computer and showed me his voters register. He had everybody by name
for his constituency.
For his constituency, name, phone numbers, where they live. He was running an American-style campaign in a rural constituency in Ghana. He could tell me how many voted for his. He had just won, the primaries. He defeated the incumbent. He could tell me how many people voted for his, and he knows them by name. And how many voted the NDC? How many are in between? How many live outside Accra? And how many live in Accra? Live outside the constituency? And how many are in Accra who have to come to the polling station to vote? So I think the parties sometimes hide from us the fact that they are more intelligent than we think they are. Because then we begin to demand more from them. Kofi Adams knows. Look, Kofi Adams, I'm challenge him. The constituency he votes in, he can mention the names and numbers to you just like that. He's just pretending that he doesn't know. And Mr. McMahon also won't tell us because they don't want us to know what they know. But we know. They are. So when they are delayed, trade secrets. But we don't care about your trade secrets. We know you know. So that's why I'm sometimes very impatient with them because when they are losing, they know. Look, within hours, you know whether you are winning or losing. So that when they were throwing in the 50 pointers, I was like, what magic are they arriving at the thing? For the first time, the MPP, by 12 midnight, knew where this was going because of the infrastructure they put up. And so some of us started checking that infrastructure. Surprisingly, the EC came out and declared their thing a fake. Yes, if you go to the EC's pagebook wall, they took one shot of what the MPP was circulating from his projection. They had a projector screen, and they'll screenshot it and push it around. And the EC put that on his Facebook wall and called it a fake.
Well, we're going to interrogate that and other issues when we come back from these all-important messages. But don't go anywhere. This is the Super Morning Show. We're live on the AM show as well on Multi-TV. And we have in the studio Mr. Peter McMahon, campaign manager for the NPP, Mr. Kofi Adams, campaign coordinator for the NDC, Kofi Abochi, who's a legal practitioner and the Dean of Gimpa Faculty of Law, and Ankomah, who's a member of Occupy Ghana and also a prominent Ghanaian lawyer. More of this after these. About this violence that ensued after the results were announced. I've got to tell you, it's something that I still don't understand. I don't get it. You've won. What's your problem? Anyway, we'll talk about that and more in a while. But right now, let's conclude our analysis of how things went procedurally. Ace, the EC held several press conferences throughout the election process. That was a good thing. They were giving lots and lots of information in a timely manner. What was not so timely were the announcement of results. There was an expectation this year because of the process by which information was being passed to the EC that we would be able to get the results a lot quicker on a more regular basis throughout the process and have an idea at all times of the certified EC situation. That didn't happen. Instead, we had press conferences explaining why they can't do it. And the reasons varied. First, there was an accusation of overvoting. They said that they had evidence of widespread overvoting. Then they said that they suspected their system had been hacked, and so they'd shut it down. There was also talk of a reluctance of the party representatives to sign off the results. Essentially, some sort of combination of all these factors resulted in almost no announcement of presidential results until the final declaration. What happened there is?
I think that the EC really has to get some aspects of its operations together quickly. Yes, I was one of the first people to praise them on the fact that the voting went very smoothly,
very
compared to the special voting. And so it's amazing that they got the big one right and got the small one wrong. But at least they managed to chalk that feat. So I was one of the first people to praise them on it. But it was shocking at the time when the news stations, Joy FM, was so far ahead. And as at the time I appeared on your station, not a single result, whether provisional or certified, had come out of the EC. Provisional means it's provisional. It's what it means. It's not final. But not a single one had come out. In fact, we were on your set. When we started bashing them, then they started putting up the provisional results on their Facebook wall.
I remember you and I were talking.
Yeah, we're talking about it when the message came that check. They started pushing it out. Now, instead of giving us the results, which is what they were giving us stories. In fact, the first result the EC really gave us was to tell us that there had been low voter turnout of 49%. That's the first result they gave to us. Why did we need that information? Now, you see, if you don't give out the real information and you keep giving the corners of it, then you lend credence to conspiracy theories.
That was inaccurate, by the way.
It was inaccurate. And there's no way the EC board should have been set up by her PR people and by her IT people to give out a grossly inaccurate statement. Because at the time, they said they were at 190, and the 49%. Then the other half, 190 is almost the median. The other half comes in and it jumps to 68%. It's statistically impossible unless the people, the next voting will have to do 75, 80% for the average to fall to 60, rise from 49 to 68.
We figured out how they made that mistake, by the way. Do you want to know?
Yeah, tell me.
Okay, all right. Okay, so the correct way of calculating the voter turnout at any point during the collation of the results is that you take the number of people on the voters' registers in the constituencies that you've received results for, and then you take the number of people who voted as a percentage of those on the register. That's how you figure out your voter turnout. What they were doing, and we realized this because we did the same thing and came up with the 49% that they announced. They were taking the number of people who had voted in the constituencies that they'd received results for as a percentage of the number of people on the National Voters Register. Yeah. So they were taking the number of people who had voted in however many constituencies they had received results for at the time. They were taking that as a percentage of the number of people on the National Voters Register instead of the number of people on the register of those same constituencies. So they were getting a much lower voter turnout, and they kept that denominator constant, that National Voters Register constant. So every time they got more, they would recalculate, and the figure would suddenly be higher. But the fact is,
I'm a lawyer. I'm probably a lawyer because my math wasn't too good. This is basic stats, first year.
I failed O-level maths.
Yeah, me too. I had to rewrite.
Yeah,
but even this doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Right now, so how gold cannot rust. This is the EC and giving all the money to have the statisticians and the IT people to give us, and they gave us, and that was the first real result they gave to us, and it was false. Then we heard about the hacking of data. That was by a tweet. Then when the EC bosses spoke, finally they spoke about compromise of transmission. Then we heard about widespread voting. Parties refusing to sign without telling us which of the parties was refusing to sign what. And then there was an issue about incomplete submissions. I listed 6 things that the EC said, which they either haven't explained or were outright false. Because listen, there are people who work in the EC. There are people in the tally room did not know about alleged hacking of data till they came out of their workplace to hear that there was a tweet out. When they were working with good old, Excel, and their work was going on as every other year. And you notice another thing, Kojo. Some of the things the ECPR said, the EC chair didn't repeat them. So what was the PR doing? Now, so I'm entitled to ask questions. Before the ECPR gentleman puts out information, does it go to the commissioners? Do they all approve and agree that we're on the same page and that this should be the official communication of the EC? If that is the case, then the EC has got to explain a lot of the things that the PR said that the chairperson did not reproduce. These are some of the things that caught my attention. And I thought that, look, we whilst congratulating the EC for the voting process, its post-vote management of the release of the information was awful and shambolic. And on that, I don't think I will give them even a single thumb up. But the voting process, I think they got that one right and spot on. But the critical thing, the transmission, was really, really awful. And we need to ask ourselves, is it that they do not have the facilities? Maybe it is the facilities. And this is one of the things I've learned through working with Occupy Ghana. We take on public institutions, we fight them and fight them and fight them and fight them. Then finally, when we sit down with them, we realize that, Jack, they just don't have it. They just don't have it. So there needs to be an audit of the EC system. If we paid money for the telcos to provide an electronic transmission system and it tanked, we need that process audited. And Ghanaians need to be told why the system did not work. Did the system really not work? And if so, why did it not work? We need independent audit of the EC itself after every election.
Very well.
The parties are required to file their accounts.
Yeah.
I am suggesting that after every election, the EC itself ought to be subjected to an independent audit, because somebody from outside the EC has to explain to Ghanaians whether indeed there was a hack of data or even an attempt to hack data. Because what has happened then is that things get mashed up in public, and a simple system put out by the MPP to gather their reports is now being put out there, interesting, Mr. McMahon, by some of the people in your party and some of the people outside your party, that system somehow hacked the EC. Now, it is, with due respect, it's only a person with due respect who is brain dead who will say that a system that collects independent data, parallel data, and it is the party's own data, somehow hacks the EC system. It's unbelievable. But unfortunately, this is being fed out. So people in your party who want to claim undeserved credit, there's a recording out there on social media, somebody saying this is what you did. Kojo, I went to see. At the end of the journalists went, media went, diplomatic corps went, and the gentleman, Mr. Nochi, was open. He showed you everything he was doing. Where was the hack? So EC has a lot of explanation to do, but maybe they have a serious logistical challenge and an independent audit. Look, Kojo, let me ask, how many elections have we had? Have we ever had an audit of the ballots? We always hear 536,000 spoiled ballots. Have we ever had an independent audit of the ballots? Of the 23, 22, 23, 24? We need, but you see, a lot of these things involve money. Whether government will provide money for it is another thing. But with what I saw the MPP had put out, I think that all the parties should replicate it. And the EC itself, if it did that, would have a much better way of giving us results than what happened this time around.
Indeed. Now, Kofi, obviously, these statements that the EC, was putting out throughout the process, the idea was to inform us. But you can hear, and I'm sure Ace is not the only one, there are some people who believe that actually the result was that they misinformed us. Does any of this seem deliberate, or is it just that they didn't have a grip of what was going on?
Well, deliberate or otherwise, it's hard to tell, but I would want to believe that they were not deliberate. I would want to believe that somehow there was good intent behind whatever is being churned out there. But the key question is what you raised, whether they were actually telling us what we needed to hear. It is important for us to remember that election survives a lot on perceptions. And where there's a lack of information, rumors reign. Unfortunately, I think in this particular respect, that's what appeared to have happened after the elections. While, as is mentioned, the electoral process itself, the day of the election itself, was highly successful. The post-election part left a few things to be desired. The key point to understand is that the conflictual character of elections. Of what you have once we have complied with the process. And the process is there's been an election, there's been a validation at the polling station level, pink sheets have been signed. Once you have gone through that and you have certified by your returning officers that indeed these have been complied with, the EC has to declare them subject to a post-declaration audit. And that's why the law gives remedial options, i.e., in the event that the EC declares results and a party thinks that there are clear evidence of more practices. We've had presidential election. Well, we've not had a presidential election overturned, but we've had parliamentary elections overturned to the ultimate and a declaration made validating a particular president sitting in office at the time, and that was now outgoing President Mahama. So the process is clear, and therefore I found it a bit surprising and almost disturbing. And the reason I found it a bit disturbing was because the country appeared to have been sitting on tenterhooks at the time. Given what we experienced on the day of voting, it was quite regrettable that we had moved from excellence to a dangerously looming, degenerative prospect for the country. And I found it very dangerous and very risky. And once you started having statements being issued by the observers, you knew that something was amiss. So I think that we have a contrasting scenario here. An excellent voting day and a post-electoral process that appeared not to have been well managed. Fortunately, I think the EC ultimately did what he has to do. At this stage, it may appear to be some post-mortem, but as Ace has mentioned, it is important for us to take an audit of this, because I guarantee you, what can plunge Ghana into chaos is not any of the collateral things. It is the EC. The EC is the body that can make declarations and is the body that can literally unmake things. And so if you have the EC, as it were, especially when it comes to the contestations, not managing the contestations well, the parties can take a cue from that, and some of them can garner all kinds of bravados that can create dangerous chaos for this country. So I think that while we have scaled this, and again, it's a pity because I do not want much of the glory taken away from the new commissioner. I think when the transition was made, many were those who were skeptical about whether or not we're going to have a successful EC as we used to have under the former Dr. Afarijan. I think by and large, she is one of the biggest success stories of this election. And unfortunately, the management of the latter part, the declaratory part, appears to be taking that shine out of the otherwise glorious moment that she should have been enjoying at the moment. And so by and large, I would still want to say that she's been a success as far as we're concerned at the moment. But the part dealing with the declaration, some lessons must be learned. Moving forward, we have to improve that. Because it is at that stage that parties can begin taking advantage of churning out all kinds of things, garnering their supporters to do all kinds of things, and parties who think they may not be doing well on the numbers can also, as it were, mobilize the supporters to create chaos and all kinds of things moving forward. So I think there are some lessons to be learned in that respect, and I would just want us to pay attention to that.
All right. Well, the next thing we're going to talk about is the transition process. And, of course, we're also going to have to deal with these reports of rampaging supporters all over the country. I mean, this is something that, to be honest, we certainly need to deal with in full. We'll try and understand why on earth this should be happening, why the winners seem to be out on the streets doing these crazy things, which have resulted in the death of one person. That's terrible and condemnable. But we'll also find out what the NPP intends to do about it, and why on earth the police, instead of going out and arresting people, issued a statement. A statement? Anyway, okay, so Amanar Company Limited wants you to partake in this year's pre-Christmas big land sales promo at Afienya. You can secure plots at Afienya at reduced prices from 10,000 Ghana cedis to 6,000. Payment plans are available, and of course, they are registered free from litigation with good access roads. Find their offices adjacent the Ashaiman Municipal Assembly and directly opposite the Queen's Hotel. Call them on 020-142-7331. Okay, now most institutions say that they will lend you money. Yeah, and they do, but only after they've stretched you for weeks. So thank goodness for My Money, because they are different. They believe it should be easy to get the money you need when you need it. So if you need a loan, no problem. Come and get it with your car. With a My Car title loan, you can now borrow up to 20,000 Ghana cedis with just your car as collateral. And it takes only 24 hours to review your application so that you can get the help you need quickly. Call them on 030-242-9120, or just go visit them in one of their branches across the nation for more information. In Accra, you can find them at Adai House on the N1 Highway at Beka, or at any of the Bayport offices, including Kokomlemle, next to ATTC, Achimota, near the new overhead and opposite Allied Oil. In Tema, they are at Konedu Plaza, Community 4, adjacent Chemu Secondary School, or at the Bayport office in Dakwa Plaza on the Tema General Hospital Road. Turn your car into cash while driving it by calling 030-242-9120. My Money, more options, more opportunities. Proudly brought to you by CFC Savings and Loans. Speak Out on the Super Morning Show is brought to you by the Oxford at Apollonia City. Live your passion. And of course, it's great to announce that if you're planning to travel to and from Accra, Kumasi, Tamale, Takoradi, or Lagos, then Capital Bank, in partnership with Africa World Airlines, has made flying easier. Simply walk into any Capital Bank branch, book your flight, make payments, collect your tickets, and fly to your preferred destination. When you decide to travel, make sure it's with Africa World Airlines and Capital Bank. Value for you. All right, so when we come back, Mr. Peter McMenu will tell us a little bit about the NPP's transition plans. We'll see if we can delve into the realm of speculation and see if we can start to figure out how the party is thinking when it comes to who will be in charge of what as the new government starts to take shape. We'll also talk about these supporters rampaging on the street. What's that about? And why did it take so long to get a statement from the NPP on that? We'll also talk about the actual transition process. We need to understand it, and there are some legal aspects to it that, when explained, will make perfect sense to you. All right, there's only one place this can happen, and it's right here with us. Don't go anywhere.
Processes would allow for dead persons not to even resurrect to come and vote and so on and so forth. They stood their ground. I think especially the chairperson of the commission, she came in at the time that we were just so near to an election, and she stood her ground. Solid woman, took decisions, and have brought the commission this far. I think that the Electoral Commission did a great job. When people didn't find their names during the special voting, a lot of noise was made about it. But
were you not worried about that?
No, but I understood the process. A lot of them were making noises out of not understanding. People thought that special voting was an opportunity to transfer votes. They didn't realize that special voting, you were just being given an opportunity to vote ahead of the voting day, and it meant that you needed to go to your constituency where you registered to exercise that franchise. They thought so. They didn't find. They say, "Oh, but I took my name to Accra here. I'm a journalist here. I'm a police officer in this area. I took my name there, so I expected to be there." When the person actually registered in another constituency.
So should they have been better educated by the EC?
Possibly not just the EC. They should also not have made so much noise as if somebody was up there to stop them from voting. Many of these persons, when they went and finally found their names, they kept quiet. That's the problem with us. And some of them have the microphone like you do. They should have aided the process by letting the world know, even before the main voting, that, oh, it was our fault. This was what happened. I went to where I registered and I found my name. They kept quiet. So that perception of either taking people off or putting some in remained in people's mind. And it could have caused us some pain in the main elections. But
So
thank
that's
God.
what you say they should have done after.
Yeah, they should have done
process.
after they have found their names.
But
That
could the problems not have been avoided by better education?
Of course, we always avoid problems by better education. And if the education reach a certain limit, and that was your understanding, and you happen to have found the right thing, it's important that you bring it out, especially when you have a microphone. If it is not maybe just a police officer who do not have the microphone to speak to, you can say, okay, you don't have any platform, so there's nothing for you to do. But for the media persons who had that opportunity, I didn't hear anything from them. But
Really?
I heard
Nothing?
No, I didn't hear from them saying
Really?
that I was able. Did you hear from any one of them? Most of them who were complaining that
Yes,
they
I did.
didn't.
When they finally
Yeah.
voted, they came on air
On
and
this-
said
on-
we have
on this network.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
network. They came back and said we have.
Maybe I didn't.
So, yeah, you
I
didn't
couldn't
hear.
listen to all the networks at the same time, but I didn't hear the levels of noise that I heard when the names were not in. I didn't hear same when they ultimately found their names at places that they were supposed to have voted. But all in all, I think that the EC have conducted an election. We always respect outcome of elections, not because either we have won or we have lost. If we feel that you have to accept elections, and we have accepted. Once you have considered, and then let's move on. Things that have happened wrong, you look at them, you study them, and you find a way of blocking them. And I'm happy that for these elections, we do not have people on the street from the side that have lost. We do not have. We've accepted. We've called President-elect Nanado and congratulated him. And I believe that through this, he has equally also learned something. That sometimes it's good to be, do we call it a gracious loser also, and allow the person who have won to carry on. He is requested for prayers and support. I can assure him he doesn't even need to request for prayers and support, because we know as patriots that's what we are supposed to do. As Democrats, that's what we are supposed to do. You have to support the president, because if he performs well, it's for the good of the country, which we pray.
So you'll be supporting Nana Akufo-Addo?
Of course, we will support him. We will remind him of many of the things. We will remind him that they are
Support by
contractors.
reminder.
They are contractors that are old, that must be paid in 100 days. We will remind him that there are young people in school that need free education. We will remind him my district needs a factory because there are people who must work there. My village needs a dam. I want to go into serious farming. There are streams there. We will be reminding him of a lot of the things. We knew he knew everything. Mr. McMahon, they knew. Even they were quoting lower growth figures than they actually are. So they cannot come and give us any excuse that the economy is this, economy is that. No. They were
So
mentioning.
you'll be calling for the dams.
We will be calling for the dams. We will be
But I
calling
thought
for
you
the
said they were
factories.
bad ideas.
Bad ideas,
Yeah, I
but
thought
that
you
is
said-
upon which they voted them. So we will ask for those things. They are,
Okay. All right.
It was upon that.
now,
So we'll be asking. We'll remind him.
I want to quickly run this by you. You know, the day after, sorry, Mr. McMinu, I will come to you in a moment, I promise. The day after the election,
Yes.
you know, there's been a lot of criticism about the delay in the announcement of the results.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've heard a few views on that. I'm just wondering, from your perspective, you know, the last time, in the last election, when there were disputes, when people disputed some of the you know, results and so forth, what they were told by the EC was that they should go to court.
Yeah.
Should that not have been the case in this one
You
as
see,
well?
there was no delay. Before the game, there are rules that have been agreed by parties that in 72 hours.
It was no longer the law anymore.
Why is that?
It was no longer the law. It used to be
It's
the law
even
in
not-
CR15. It's not in the law anymore.
Please,
It's
I'm
not
not.
in the law.
I'm
The same
saying,
thing is
I'm
not
saying,
in the law.
I'm saying
It's
there are
in the
things. I've not said that it's put in the law. I said before the game, there are rules that we have agreed to.
Where is that rule and where did we reach?
When you were talking, I didn't interject.
So did the EC
So,
actually, you know,
the
violate
EC
this
the EC
this
did
agreement
not
by
violate-
announcing it before 72 hours?
No. They said within. It meant that they should do it before.
Yeah.
They
so,
could do it even an hour after vote ended, but not beyond 72 hours. So all those who were calling and doing this, if the EC in their mind thought that, look, let's check everything, because once we make our pronouncement, that pronouncement must be defended at all levels. Should anybody even decide that he or she wants to go to court,
But
you
at any-
you do not make a pronouncement that you cannot possibly defend. So you cannot make your pronouncement upon Mr. McMenu's call You cannot make your pronouncement upon multimedia's call. You cannot make your pronouncement upon maybe EIB call. You have to make a pronouncement upon your own EC's own
But
conviction.
at any given time,
and I'm
the
saying
EC
that
had
they
results
did,
of certain constituencies.
Listen,
why did they not put those out?
Why did you think that the EC accepted that parties should have representatives at the collation center? Because we expect that goodwill spirit to prevail. Sometimes it is not everything that is law. Sometimes things that you reach out of consensus even work better than just insisting that, oh, the law says.
No, but the collation center is law.
No, I'm not. You are not listening.
Representative of the collation center is law. It's not easy. It's not easy consensus.
If you listen to me,
I'm listening to you very carefully. I was quiet, but I can't let this one go.
I've not even finished.
Sorry, I take it back.
I'm talking,
but I just want to establish the representation of the collation center.
Let's hear Mr. Adams.
I am saying that I'm talking about the parties picking the resource and being given the opportunity to cross-check and kind of accepting that, oh, this is okay for us. It's not law.
The Supreme Court decided a couple of weeks to the election that all the forms should be given to the parties and the parties should sign off. Kofi, it is law.
All right.
That you sign off before they declare the results.
No, not declare. No.
That is why he's asking.
No.
You didn't listen to the question he asked.
No.
He asked the question, why hold on and not declare?
But you keep saying that it is not the law. You went, but it's not everything that's law. I'm just telling you that the parties had a right to the information. So don't say.
I didn't say that they didn't have a right.
You might have agreed on something, but please, that's the law.
Let's hear what Mr. Adams had to say, and then if there are reactions, we can.
Okay, I'm sorry, I take it back.
No, but you have said it. How do you say it and then you say that you have taken it? Go disrupting my
go ahead.
Mr. Adams, please go ahead.
I hope you tell him not to disrupt my thoughts again.
Kofi, we're having a banter. We are not having a debate. This is
okay. You've just heard.
You should even step out of the studio and go and be celebrating. He and Mark Menu. You are myself to continue.
You mean Kofi is not celebrating? What did I just say about the dean?
You say?
You mean Kofi is not celebrating?
Okay, all right. Let's get back. Let's get back to the issue, Mr. Adams. You were saying
they didn't really have to wait for them to say that they are to certify. All they needed is to be provided information that okay, these have come. This is it. Then they move ahead. But out of some agreement, some consensus, the EC decided that, look, we really want to wait for the parties to be satisfied that what we have presented them is truly what has come from our lower levels to us. The law didn't say that they have to. When they give them the information, they must wait and do all their cross-checking and all that before they go ahead. They could have just gone ahead. But long before this point, there has been some kind of consensus. So out of that consensus, you allow for a certain time. And I believe that the EC allowing that consensus building even aided. If the EC had been maybe intransigent and had gone ahead and said, oh, look, whether you cross-check or you don't cross-check, we are going ahead just to go and announce. Maybe we would have been talking something else now. Because if you listen to the MPP, in 2012, when they approached the former chairman of the commission to delay the declaration of results.
That was a joke, right?
You see?
I mean, I had a good laugh when they did that.
To delay the results for them to bring all the things. And later on, he said, no, they should provide the evidence. They went and brought something, he said. But this is
also in 2008, they asked for a delay.
Yeah. Then it went back. Finally, the results was declared. And they went to court. One of the arguments that was pushed by many persons, I don't know whether Mr. McMahon will still remember or maybe he has forgotten about that, if Afarijan had given them a hearing, had even delayed by a week or even two, they would have sorted all this out and these court processes and the rest would not have happened. That was their solid position.
Okay.
That a delay would have allowed for sorting. Then the same people today, I feel that 72 hours was such a too long a time that the results could have been declared maybe 12 hours earlier or in 24 hours. I think that the EC did a good job and they have done a declaration. Let's move on.
Okay, Mr. McMenu, there were certainly some constituencies that were in dispute. But should the EC have announced the ones that were not in dispute?
Well, thank you. First, there was no consensus Kofi Adam wants the whole world to know. Because I wrote and I have a copy of that letter. If I go to my office, I wrote to the Electoral Commission that they should come out and clearly let Ghanaians know how results are going to be collated and declared at the national level. Because it was murky. And people didn't understand whether it was going to be electronic transmission, whether it was going to be this. But for me and my party, we thought that openness and transparency are key elements in any election. And therefore, the Electoral Commission should come out boldly and tell Ghanaians how the elections are going to be collated and declared at the national level. I asked this question at IPAC. I didn't get an answer. I followed it up with a letter, 3 reminders. So don't tell me there was a consensus. Otherwise, why would I write these letters? That's the point. So, and I keep saying
What
every
letter,
now and then.
What letter that you wanted what?
The
didn't hear
process
you well, because-
of transmission, declaration, collation of presidential results
Yeah.
should be made known to Ghanaians.
Yeah.
We didn't know. I mean, and
When,
I even
when
went
they
on.
did the test,
Please.
this were you not there?
They
When
did what?
They test this, and didn't you? Were you not represented?
That was even not the entirety. Of
No,
it.
but at least the test
Who
you can't
tells
do
you that
all
the
the
test is the
entirety.
entirety?
They can't do the entirety. They
Oh.
only do test for a few for you to see the process.
No.
So were you expecting them to simulate
The
all the
whole
almost
no.
29,000
The steps and
or-
stages of collation and declaration of results. How many people in this country,
But
including me
this-
and you,
This
otherwise
is,
we wouldn't
this
be
is
sitting
in
here
this is in
and
law.
debating.
This is
Why is the law?
in law about the various centers.
The law,
that you
where is the
have.
law? The Supreme Court gave the ruling up
constitu-
to collation center of the constituency. But from there to the national, tell me the process. That every
But that was
Ghanaian
what they
knew and
demonstrated.
understood.
That was what they
did
demonstrated
what did
for
they
us.
demonstrate? Even at the demonstration, I asked a question about read-only access to the portal. And the demonstrator said, oh, we don't have the authority. Ask the Electoral Commission. Meanwhile, the day before, I had asked the Electoral Commission at an IPAC meeting that we want to have access to read only. Then he directs that, oh, this one is technical. So we'll go and ask the technical people the next day. The next day, I asked the technical people. They say, oh, we don't have the authority. I said, you don't have the authority, but the EC is sitting here. So let them answer.
Quick, let me
That's
quickly
the-
inform
But let me-
our
let me-
listeners.
let me-
Just a moment. Let me quickly inform our listeners that today we have an extended version of the show, so there won't be a 10 o'clock bulletin. Cosmopolitan Mixed takes over at
I hope
10:30.
you don't come and charge us for speaking beyond.
No, this is gratis. Okay then. So you were making a point.
So
You-
I
you
think
should
that
Because if they charge, Ace will pay. Ace
elections
will pay
and
for it.
election management body
How much?
of this country and Africa in general must understand the values on which they work. The values of transparency and accountability, the values of openness, inclusiveness, accuracy. These are things that if you want to perfect yourself as an effective electoral management body, you must come up with. So don't hold things to your chest. Now, coming to your key question. We think that results starts coming in. But at any point in time, if every 2 hours you are going to make a statement or a press release, you must add the number of constituencies or polling stations whose results have come in, where each candidate stands. Then the next 2 hours, if there are additional constituencies or polling stations, we have moved from 100 polling stations or constituencies to this number, and this is where we are. EC never gave us that because we needed that progressive kind of results collation. And for me, elections and democracy is a journey. What happened in 2012 is a journey we must learn from and improve upon it. We were in the collation room, and then we said we wanted to have a few minutes to bring some issues out. I have asked the Electoral Commission, where is the law in this country as to when, after voting, that results must be declared? Because I know that in South Africa it's 5 days. It's 10 days, though they traditionally use 5 days. In Malawi, it's 5 days. We don't have it in our status. So you say that we have reached consensus. Why is the consensus? Put it in the law. And when we were doing the CI-94, I brought that thing up, that let us resolve and agree on the number of days after voting that results must be released. I said this taking into context that in South Africa, they have an internal auditor mechanism in between the days that the final result, the law allows them to release the results. So that if there are any, quote and unquote, overvoting or whatever, it could be resolved before the results are finally declared. So we must move and know that what has transpired over the years, I think every election must see an improvement over the previous one. And that if in 2012, ABC happened and it's not in the best interest. That's why we reform and continue to reform, because it's a journey.
All right, so we still have to talk about the transition, talk about the team, any potential likely appointments, the legal, environment in which this is happening. Educate our listeners a little bit on that. But before we come to our two guests, Ace and Kofi, for that, I want to just touch on this with you, Mr. McMahon. Your supporters, they've killed someone just because they are happy. What's that?
That's very strange, and I condemn it. I think that I don't have the true facts of the case, and I even don't know where it has happened.
In the central region, there's a police report. Yeah, Dunkwa Onofin, thank you.
It's very bad, and I think the law enforcement agencies must act promptly. We on our part have issued a statement condemning these acts and asking our people to celebrate in moderation.
But that statement was late.
We did it yesterday. We heard of it. When was it? Saturday night.
Well, it started on Friday night. We've been hearing about it. Yes, we've been hearing about these attacks and rampages and destruction of property.
We condemn it. I
all
think that
until
Nana
Sunday
Addo
when you
Dankwa
finally
Akufo-Addo
spoke.
emphasized during his acceptance speech that his victory is for all Ghanaians, irrespective of which political party you belong to. He emphasized that. And it's unfortunate that some people are unduly, and I think it's criminal, and that the state must act.
Do you think the police are afraid to act because they don't want to offend the incoming government?
Why should the police be afraid? We are not even an incumbent government now.
They don't want to be
government in waiting.
They don't want to
we
be
haven't
sacked.
as yet become, technically speaking, the government. So why are the police?
They don't want any reshuffles.
No, it's serious. I think we have to deal with these matters and get them off our back in our democratic journey.
So what's the party going to do about it?
It's happening, and you were talking about transition. You see, these are some of the things that gave way to the transitional arrangements and the transitional act. Because I recall that in 2000, the NDC were complaining that MPP were taking the cars of ministers, etc. In 2008, MPP ministers were also complaining they were being hacked, cars were being taken away from them. Then the IEA, under the Ghana's political parties program, came up that there's the need to find some grounds where we can meet and talk over handing over, and then this violence and that characterize transitions should be done with. So, having moved this far, I think that our supporters and the entire Ghanaian public must know that a government is a government for Ghanaians. And that the lessons that we have learned from 2000 to 2008 and beyond we should learn enough not to we are all brothers and sisters. And Nana has said that his government is for all Ghanaians, irrespective of your sex, your age, your tribe, your party. And MPP people are advised to listen carefully and follow what the president-elect has said.
So beyond the statement, is there anything else the party is going to do, because lives are being lost here?
The party will have to send messages. The party will have to urge the security services to act. Beyond that, it's exhortation. I mean, I sit in Accra. I don't even know where this Dunkwa thing is happening. We can talk to the Dunkwa executives to also act out there. But I think the state has a role because it borders on criminality, and they must act appropriately.
Celebration gone wrong. I never thought I'd see the day that the winners would be, hitting the streets.
It's not just celebration. It's also sometimes comments we make in the course of campaigns. It sometimes incites some of these behaviors. If in the course of campaign you make a pronouncement that all you need is to work and win and don't wait for others from us. Take over what you want. If it is take position, take that, take that. And it's not condemned by leadership then. Then the people who were working for you on the ground were working with the mind that immediately we win, I will take over toll gate. I will take over this. I will take over that. I will do
VIPs
this.
like the NDC did.
Yeah, I would do. Even in the case of the NDC, they even exercised restraint and waited for a handover. It was not a handover to have happened before even some of these people started taking, they say toilets and then the rest.
Is that in some way an improvement on what we are seeing?
Is
that in some way an improvement on what we are seeing?
It's not. It's even gotten worse.
Because they did it at a different
It's even gotten worse, and we must condemn it to the point that lives are being lost. To the point that lives are being lost. So it was wrong, especially when you have a political party that had complained and used it. You see, one of the key things the MPP talked about is about how the NDC, after they won an election in 2009, that some people were taking over this and that some bent tender documents and so on and so forth. These were things that they put out there. So if you have instances of that major to the point that a life is lost, I commend the statement from the party. It's good. I've heard the General Secretary speak to it, but that is not enough. I believe that the President-elect himself, whose victory is resulting to this, must also speak to it. He must speak seriously to it. Otherwise, our people, our supporters, are not feeling, in a way, much more safe, and they may not even feel safer. You haven't even fully taken over, and your people are doing this, and we're not hearing much. Then when you fully take over, what will be happening? So we will expect much more from him. It's not enough that the party have spoken. He must also speak. Because in our case, the president have given some directives as president to the security agencies. The party still found it necessary that let's put out a statement. And whilst we ask our supporters to kind of restrain themselves. But there's a limit to restraint. And we must not stretch to that point. I believe that we can all reach some common sense level. This morning we have been sitting here, myself and Mr. McMahon, talking, agreeing and disagreeing from different parties. If at this level we can have such a decent discussions, why can't down there also we have the same thing? Celebrate, no problem. Celebrate. You have won. Celebrate. But don't take it on persons. If you want to take over the toll gate, wait at the right time. And then you will be awarded the contract for running the tolls. In any case, there was a promise that the toll levies are not even necessary. So why take the toll? Maybe they should rather clear it and then use that to create even freer passage.
Well, we hear that some people took over a toll booth at Tema and on the motorway, and the police,
Actually, Fiapre, that one was bent. It's been bent. Not just when they went to take over and the people resisted, they actually bent, they set it up.
So anyway, we hope the police will intervene at Tema. We hear the police were actually there when it happened, which is disturbing. So let's have some intervention. Let's bring some law and order and sanity back to the streets. I just can't believe it's the winners who are doing this. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, I think I'll check this with you very quickly before I come to the transition thing, because I need to get an answer to this. This is something I heard. All right.
Me?
And,
Are you talking about
yes,
me?
yes,
Oh,
Mr.
okay,
Adams.
okay.
This is something I heard, and just because I trust the person I heard it from, I'm inclined to believe it, but I want to check with you first.
Can you forgive me?
Yes, sure.
I promise you 30 seconds.
Okay, sure.
Before you say that.
All
Because
right.
I think what he spoke about, both of them, I disagree with the way we approach these things generally. First of all, we do not have political twilight. Sorry, we have political twilight. We do not have government twilight. In other words, there's never a moment when there's no government. We should remember that even in the electoral process, there is no political crime. There's crime simpliciter. Anybody who commits an offense, the police must be on the ground. So the president directing the police shouldn't even have happened in the first place. The police must constantly be active. It's a failure of security for the police to stand by. The MPP issuing a statement, the president directing, these are just surplusage. The reality is that the police are failing to do their work. Everybody regardless of MPP, NDC, no party, whoever it is. A crime should be a crime, and it's a crime for all time.
Sure.
Actually, I didn't think we had wound up on that because I had something to say on that. People, we voted. We did not stage a coup. There's been no coup in Ghana. We have to get rid of that coup mentality. It was an election. We still have a government. So whilst screaming at MPP, control your people, can we scream at Kofi Adams' government? Can you exercise your powers as government? Kofi's right. We don't have a twilight zone in this. We still have a government. The police should arrest these clowns, and if anybody's murdered anybody, the person should be taken through the legal process. It is only in doing these things that we will get rid of the impunity. But if the police sits down, twiddling its thumbs and issuing weak statements, appealing when force can be brought to bear to stop the crime, then you feed the information that whenever there's change of power, some people can commit offenses and get away with it. Ghana Police Force, do your work. Nobody staged a coup.
They will request your services to help in
I'm
prosecuting.
not a prosecutor. Is that the difference? We are not prosecutors.
No,
I can't help.
Not yet.
I'm not a prosecutor.
They will
Okay,
request your services
all right.
to
Where
help
is this
them.
coming from?
All right. So now let me satisfy my curiosity on
Yes.
this one. All right. Okay. So, is it true
Yeah.
that the party was not aware that the president was going to call and concede?
Oh, how?
That in fact that phone call caused pandemonium?
No. The president didn't. Yes, he's the leader of the party. He has ultimate responsibility. But there were discussions. This is about the party. This one person can just, and you cannot discuss with everybody. You can't discuss with everybody. Leadership must take responsibility at certain point. When you reach you cannot go down and discuss with every national executive member or a regional executive member.
So who agreed with him to make
No, but why? You want me to put out every detail?
Why not?
No.
Why not? Is this
That's
supposed to
our
be
inner workings.
national security matter?
No, that's our inner workings. I think that the president has been credited for what he has done.
I'm not asking who disagreed, though.
He has done.
Who agreed?
Nobody disagreed. Nobody. Everybody was in sync with what the leader wanted to do. We have accepted it. What we will do into the future, what we have to communicate to you and to your audience, we will do so.
Right. Okay. All right. Now, this thing about collation, and this is the last thing we'll do before we come to transition. The thing about collation, I mean, yes, we saw this big collation center at the NPP. Did you actually collate at all? And I know why I'm asking. Yes, I'm asking. I know why I'm asking you this. Yeah.
Of course, we collated.
You had a collation.
Yeah, we
collation
actually
center.
had not just one. We had actually 3 centers to back to be able to cross-check and firm up that what it is you are getting is really.
Why did you need
authentic.
3?
You say?
Why did you need 3?
Oh, of course.
What was each one
you,
doing?
You should have asked why
How did you
the
share
EC,
the work?
Why was the EC having a backup?
So you had 1 and 2 backups,
Of course.
and you were still behind.
Oh, whether behind or not is not the issue. The truth is that we had this, and it worked for us, and we're going to improve upon it, moving into the future.
Do you think your handling of corruption cases was a factor that led to your loss?
I think this government dealt with corruption much more transparently and open than it has ever happened. But the MPP, Ace and his team.
Why are you doing this, Kofi? Kofi, why are you doing this? You want us to start this debate here?
Prosecutor
Let's
General.
not.
Trust me.
Let's not. We
Says
have
who?
very little time left.
Says who?
Says me.
Let's not.
Well, that's what you're saying.
They did a good job.
I have a
in
good,
trying
I have a
to-
day job.
in trying to paint us in a way. Look, this is the first time we've had a president actually having some members of his government, his own person, going through prosecution.
Such as?
This was a president, like if you take someone like Honorable Abu Gapele, you know, he's
Kwame Nkrumah did that. What are you talking about?
The
first president of Ghana did that. Please don't.
I'm talking about fourth Republican. Malam Issa PNC.
No, but he was a member of government. Kofi, don't put out this thing.
Have you been hearing Malam Issa of late?
He's in your party now. He's in your party now. You gleefully accepted in your party.
All right.
You see, even MPP's corruption, you took on yourself.
Why are you not allowing me?
All right.
No,
why are you not allowing me?
Because you brought my name in. I'm a day. I have a day job.
All right.
You know, the president, look, we went to Brazil. People thought that things didn't happen too well. The president said, look, let's investigate into this matter. It did not even happen just in some boardroom. He made it public, and it was even live, where people could not go, you could watch on TV. You may say that maybe the findings, there's a limit. The lawyers will tell you, when findings come out, acting on those findings takes some time. That becomes the responsibility of Attorney General. And I do hope that one day, any one of these colleagues on this panel will become an Attorney General and Minister for Justice, and then they will be able to tell us.
I see you're talking about Kofi.
Okay, Mr. Kofi Humado,
Jida. We did
no one prosecuted him
because there was no recommendation.
In fact, the Attorney General's office stated that the reason why you didn't prosecute Betty Modidrisu was to avoid embarrassment.
No, in fact, she said she went down on her knees to beg her to testify.
No. It's not. What I would say, posterity will judge President Mohammed's handling of corruption issues. I can tell you.
Let's end it there.
I can tell you. He has not handed over yet.
All right.
When he hands over, we will meet here again and we will discuss handling of corruption.
Okay.
And you will judge President Mahama right.
Okay, time will tell. Let's talk about transition very quickly. Now, of course, it's an act that was that came into being in 2012, just in anticipation of the election that year. But of course, in that particular year, it wasn't tested to its fullness because it was one government handing over to itself. But essentially, what the law says is that there must be a team. Or a transition team, members on the side of the existing government and members on the side of the incoming government. Now, the law actually defines which people should make up that membership. Chief of Staff, Minister for Presidential Affairs was added to that list. Of course, there existed such a ministry at the time. Finance Minister, Interior, Defense, Foreign Affairs, Local Government, and National Security Representation are all mandated by law, and they're supposed to deal with all kinds of things, including pay,
head of civil
service,
and
local government they are included, statutorily. Yeah. Okay. So for me, I think how I want you to lead us into that conversation, Kofi, is from the fact that their decisions are to be made by consensus. Is this practical?
Well, it's practical if the actors understand that there's work to be done, and if the actors approach the work with that pragmatism. However, it's important to also remember that there's a remedial option provided, that in the event of the failure of decision-making by reason of consensus, they refer it to an advisory council. And the advisory council is also comprised of 3 persons, the Speaker of Parliament, and nominations from the sitting president and the incoming president.
Professor Michael Kwe,
right.
And then Professor Kwesi
right.
Beatrice.
So a certain degree of pragmatism is designed to enforce this whole, to inform this whole process. I just need to hasten to add very quickly that the Constitution envisages that there is no break in governance. So I'm going to make a distinction between governance and government. The Constitution envisages that there's no break in governance, but there is a break in government because under the Constitution, government is defined as the executive power. The wielder of the executive power is an actor, and therefore he can change. So when there's an election and there's a change in the wielder of the power, you have changes in actors. So the changeover is the whole essence of the transitional process. The transitional process is designed to ensure a structured and coordinated change in power, arrangement, the exercise of power. So while there are changes in actors per government, the governance process itself continues. And that's why you see that the composition includes the head of civil service, among others. Now, government operates on 2 levels, as we know, at the political level and the professional level. So the professional level, the public service, the civil service, local government, all these. And then the political level, again, we know the executive power and authority and other people. So the Transitional Act, the Presidential Transition Act of 2012, as we all know, is a product of the chaotic transitional arrangement of 2008, when, both the NDC and the MPP, literally went about the changeover in a very haphazard manner, and there were seizures of cars. Sometimes people were met on the streets and been told to exit certain cars, among others. So you had all these experiences, and I think our constitutional arrangement has evolved over the years. We've learned a couple of things through very painful lessons, and I think the transitional arrangement is just one of these lessons that are designed to inform a structured and a more coordinated arrangement so that we have a seamless transfer. I think so far, and I have to say, this is some commendation to the outgoing government. I think so far there has been compliance with the Act. There was a timely compliance with the Act. There's been the production of requisite documents, including, I'm told, the Administrator General has confirmed that handed over notes were actually written and handed over to the Administrator General even before the elections. Now, this is significant. It's significant that a government in power has a clear recognition of the possibility that it may actually exit power, even though the transitional arrangement takes into account the fact that even a government handing over to itself must still do that in a transitional way. But we all know that that is really perfunctory. The reality is, when you have a government changing over from one party to the other, that's where we have the difficulties. And I think that it is to the credit of the outgoing government that so far there has been compliance, and I'm expecting a very seamless transitional arrangement without
I think
difficulties.
to even add to Kofi's point, the inauguration of yesterday was indeed at the instance of the outgoing government. That if we didn't do it, we will not be meeting the constitutional. No, there were requests that should have happened.
But let's explain this. Look, the processes need to be sufficiently strong, and I like the word. We need the processes to be idiot-proof, so that even if an idiot like me is given the work to do, the processes are so strong that it will still yield the desired response. Okay, the law demands that 30 days before an election, every minister must prepare handover notes, and not just prepare them. It gives details as to what should be in the handover notes, and I think what we should do is to develop a template.
That was done.
It's a list of questions. Now, when you do that, it says you file copies with A, B, and C and D officers, so they are available. So it should make it very smooth, because you've given out all the critical details about your sector in that, because you are leaving office. It deals with the issue of when they leave their houses and stuff. But to me, that's an insignificant point. So if we go into transitions, still hoping that we have gotten rid of the coup mentality. And it's not a time where you're going to have an inquisitorial questioning of a former minister and calling them names, which appears to be what have happened, led to the chaotic 2008, where literally the MPP walked out and refused to participate.
It was worse in 2001.
And there was no government to take and look, Ghana suffered. This is our third major transition. I think finally good sense is beginning to prevail, and I hope that as they meet in the meetings, there'll be mutual respect to each other. Nobody's going to get out there and go and hold a press conference and say the country is broke. When you do that, you foul the environment, you poison the roots, and if you poison the roots, the fruits become poison. Let the victors and those who didn't win show mutual respect for each other. These people have been in government, whether you like them or not. They are served at the will of the people. Let them hand over to you neatly, decently, and let's all move on. Ghana can chalk another success in this area.
Mr. McMahon, very briefly.
Yes, I think that this
I don't know.
This whole matter of transition cannot pass without mentioning the role IEA has played in all this. Because in 2000, there was a major conflict between outgoing and incoming. It repeated itself in 2009. And the Ghana Political Parties Program, under the auspices of the Institute of IEA, then came up that, no, this thing cannot continue to go on. It's about time that we sanitize our handover and transitions. So they brought in some consultants and professionals to detail on how transitions should be done. It was first put in place in 2008. It didn't finish. Then Professor Mills finished it up, and the act came into being. Various amendments since then have gone into it. It's unique because I know that when Nigeria first had their first transfer of power from one political party to the other, Nana Tudazi, former chief of staff of the NDC, who was part of the transition in 2001, was invited to share Ghana's experiences with them. And I also know that Chile has gone through various forms of transition, and they have matured to the extent that any party that is coming in knows freely what needs to be done, and the handing over is clear and unambiguous. I think we are getting there. But before we get there, there was a British head of civil service who was also in this country. And he said that in their country, before 6 months to elections, the leader of the main opposition party, who can win an election, is taking through all the departments and giving briefing, adequate briefing, because he has the chance, the possibility of winning power. I think that is also part of the transition.
It's like the American system. Once you get confirmed as a
this man
candidate,
came here, so that's
you
what I
get some briefings.
So
National
we must be
briefings,
looking at
and
these
once you become a
to
candidate,
sanitize, and it must go down. We must not also be leaving the transition only at the top, as we have just been discussing about the various violence and the troubles that are going down there. We should find a way of sanitizing the transition also at the grassroots and down there with something.
Okay, I want to thank you all.
The Act demands regular national security briefing of president-elect and all that. And the three major committees that they must have, the ground, that's inauguration, presidency, and then governance. All that, I think, has been put in place. And we'll work to have a seamless transition. What we do hope is that it will be carried through.
So by now, Nanado already knows about the Gitmutu and the market.
He knows everything, including even the vandalization that is going on now after election.
Wonderful. All right, I want to say a big
everything.
yes. Whether they were two.
But actually, he was briefed.
I want to say a very big thank you.
He was briefed by the Americans themselves.
Very big thank you to all of you for making the time to be with us here in the studio. Mr. Peter McMenu of the NPP, Mr. Kofi Adams of the NDC, of course, lawyer Kofi Abuchi of the Gimpa School of Law, and of course a private legal practitioner, as well as Ankomah of Occupy Ghana, also a private legal practitioner. It's interesting times we have ahead, and all week we'll be talking about this transition process and what to expect. Tomorrow we'll see if we can do a bit of speculation about who we might be seeing in government, and particularly who that independent prosecutor might be. That and more tomorrow. Stay with us. My name is Koji Youngson. Thank you so much for listening.
On the Electoral Commission.